everybody, and welcome back to Permanent Waves. So we're going to continue our trend with progressive music this week, and progressive music is just typically termed as music where they've taken something conventional, i.e. more conventional sounds of rock and metal, and they've combined it with something non-conventional like classical or jazz or electronic or just something new. And so to revisit that topic, we're going to talk about a more recent progressive band called Violent Silence from Sweden. And Violent Silence have been around for quite a few years. Their earliest release dates back to 2004, I believe, or 2008, one of the two. So they've been around for a while, but today we're talking about their most recent record, Twilight Furies, that came out in 2020. And I kept hearing about it because I just Bandcamp just kept shoving it in my face. Like, hey, if you like progressive music, listen to this. And I was like, cool album cover. Okay. And it's kind of obscure. Like there's not really any reviews or information available on what it sounded like or what it was. So I just went shot in the dark and went, all right, let's try this thing out. And all right, Isaac, how did you feel after listening to that 20-second opening snippet that starts the album called Fair Warning, which then immediately sagged into a 16-minute track called Tectonic Plates? How'd you feel when you hit that point?
Well, it's a setup, getting you ready for the payoff, which is not only that, it's not only a 16-minute, 10-second track, but the third track is 13 minutes, 9 seconds.
Yeah.
So they had a lot. Like, they had a lot here. I was impressed.
Yeah, they weren't dicking around. The shortest song on this record, because there are a couple interludes, is like 9 minutes. There are the four main pieces that are kind of the cornerstone. Four main pieces that are a cornerstone of this record, and the shortest one's 9, the one's 10, one's 13, and one's 16, as we've mentioned already. And there are 3 little instrumentals. The first one's called Fair Warning, which is just a bunch of keyboard notes. Played it with weird melody and a weird timing, which I've actually read an interview was to prime the listener, like fair warning for what's going to happen next. And it got its job done. Let's just say that much. This record was pretty impressive to me from the get-go because, I mean, first of all, there's like no guitar on this record. It's not very often that you have a progressive metal record that doesn't have a guitar, or like guitar soloing and guitar noodling is kind of a staple of the genre. So to have a progressive record but doesn't even rely on that at all is automatically sets it apart. And also like just the focus on keyboards and more percussive sounds. That's what really stands out to me, is this is a very percussion oriented record, very atmospheric, and it just alternates between using keyboards for percussion and using them to build more of a glacial kind of sound. Like it sounds like the cover. That's one of those cool things we talk about every now and then where a record can sound like the cover. And this one to me definitely does. It has like a very cold kind of cloudy sound, which is just awesome. I like getting lost in that for a bit. And it does have a very dense sound. It's very layered, lots of keyboards, lots of vocal layers that you can kind of get lost in. And that's something I always really appreciate with not only a progressive record, but just a record in general. It kind of draws you in and brings you to a different place. It's something very spatial about that.
Yeah, and a lot of not downtime, but a lot of like time for the instruments to just let loose, which is always nice to hear. It's not all lyrics, but it's also not all instruments, and that's I enjoy.
It's a good blend, and also another staple of progressive music is very well played instruments, and there's no exception to that here. There's a lot of weird time signatures, a lot of multi-part vocal harmonies, and a lot of pretty crazy drumming.
Golly, I can't tell whether it was Lunar Sunrise or Twilight Furies if it was the one that kept changing time signatures. I was like, what is that? Is that 5 or is that 7? I couldn't tell.
You know what? It was both. Those are both pretty complicated songs. Well, especially Tectonic Plates. It's gonna be crazy to play. Speaking of that song, the title track Twilight Furies really understands payoff, and we talked a bit. I wanted to say this in our Pain of Salvation review, but I forgot. A lot of music and a lot of art and a lot of life is based on tension and release. Yes. And these guys understand that very well. Pain of Salvation understood it very well too. I wanted to mention that they did a very good job with that in Panther as well. But these guys understand payoff and they understand tension and release. And why I say that is especially the track Twilight Furies, like there's that That's kind of starts off as the moodiest, outright darkest track. And it goes through its motions. It kind of almost teases at a chorus and then goes back into a darker instrumental section. And then it comes back around again at about the 5-minute mark with the same build up, the same verse we heard before. And then opposed to going back into a darker instrumental section, it kind of just falls away and it blooms out into multiple vocal melodies. And it takes on more of an optimistic, a bit of more of an airy, like a breath of fresh air kind of tone. And that's really cool. That's like, I like examples like that where it's like, that's how you do it. Where you just point to that and say, that's what I'm talking about. Because like normally that tension release thing isn't always super easy to explain with a lot of conventional music, but that's just a great example of how to do that very well.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Where was it now? It's funny how you say stress and release, given that their second track is called Tectonic Plates, and those are definitely very well known for having stress and release a part of their identity. I'll say that.
Yeah, definitely. Back to the instrumentals. The guitars, the lack of guitars doesn't hurt this record at all. Like the keyboards more than make out for it because there's so many of them. Yeah, is there? I can't remember. I have a hard time remembering the bass, but I do recall hearing it, and it was definitely in there.
I was not actually paying attention to the bass. There was one instrument that I was like really paying attention towards.
What was that?
It was a vibraphone.
Ooh. Well, actually, fun fact: those are all keyboards.
You gotta be kidding me!
Right?
They. Oh man. Okay, so. Fun fact, in high school, I actually played a vibraphone. Oh, yeah? That was my main instrument in band that I played. And I did not give a lot of, I did not put a lot of effort into it. I didn't like look up and search stuff. Honestly, the only reason I learned, I wanted to play, or I just chose vibraphone was because it was way easier to learn than learning a saxophone, a trumpet, a trombone, a tuba or sousaphone, a clarinet, a flute, or anything like that. Because I'm kind of not the most hardworking individual, and that takes time. And I had already practiced piano, so I already knew what how the piano works. So I'm like, well, vibraphone's pretty much the same setup in a way. Obviously not the same, of course, but it's there. So it's like I could just translate what I can do on piano to here. So it's like let's do that.
And clearly you got stiff lips and a dry mouth.
Exactly.
I'm laughing because I had a trumpet in my hands not too long ago, and I could not make a damn sound with that thing. So I hear you in that one. I could only make just like echoey, brassy fart sounds with my lips on that trumpet's mouthpiece. But another different thing about this record sound right out the gate, and this is more gonna throw you if you listen to a lot of progressive metal, is the vocals.
Yes.
Yeah, you know what I mean. A lot of progressive metal, and this is just industry standards. Your Dream Theater, your Symphony X, Fates Warning. A lot of the kind of flagship bands have more of an Iron Maiden or a Judas Priest kind of flair, where the singers kind of have more of a tenor range. They're a bit higher, more almost like in that same range that you would hear out of Chris Martin or Bruno Mars. Like they sound nothing like either of those singers, but that general kind of note range I think of.
Yeah, of course.
This guy he's not quite like Metallica, James Hetfield kind of low, but he has more of a kind of husky, kind of gritty voice, and it really caught me off guard at first. It took some getting used to. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the end of the day, I appreciate it because it's different, and he does a good job. Like him and the keyboardist are trading off the harmonies, and I think if it were just that voice and it was single track the whole record, it might not have had the same effect. But the multi-tracking and the clever use of vocal harmonies is really cool. Like there's that interlude Beyond the Past at 30 seconds long. It's just a repeating. A rearrangement of the harmonies of the second song, Scorched Earth Pass. And it's really cool, showing what these guys know how to do with just vocal harmonies.
Yeah, I like them bringing that back as well. Again, kind of, I guess, lulling you into something, but making it sound different of like, no, even though we're using like the same harmonies, we're doing something different.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea. I really appreciate how they did that too. And it's 37 seconds long or whatever. They could have easily just left that off the record and no one would have noticed, but the fact that they included it's still really cool.
Yeah, it would be interesting to like make this how this would sound if you didn't have any of those intro songs.
Yeah, I think that's why those are there, because we've mentioned it before with how long the individual like songs are. I think those are nice because they do give you a more direct break. You know, they understand that like a 16-minute song basically right out the gate is a big ask, and it is. It's a pretty high buy-in to get into the rest of the record. It's great. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, what am I more likely to listen to if I have a 20-minute commute to work? A record with like 4 4-minute songs, or am I going to jump for that 16-minute song? You know.
Oh
So
yeah.
like it does make you think a bit more like, when can I squeeze this in? Which is always kind of a problem with these records. Well, not a problem in daily life anyways. Like, the ideal way to listen to an album, the way I like doing it, is just kind of sit there and enjoy it. And for that, it doesn't matter at all. Or you go for a long walk, it doesn't matter at all. But for daily purposes, it does make an album like this kind of hard to listen to. Unless you got like a 40-minute drive to work, in which case, give her, right? But yeah, that is kind of one unwieldy aspect of this record. Like, one thing I appreciate about a lot of bands will have those big epics, like those big 10 plus 13 plus minute songs like this one does, but they'll balance them out with some shorter ones too. So that's one thing. One thing about this record you could view as a negative is that it is a big commitment to get through. It's worth it because it's really interesting, it's really fresh, it's really really unique, and it draws you in and it has a lot to offer, but it can seem like a really big investment out front.
Yes, especially when, like, track after track 2, track 3 is 13 minutes.
Yeah, that's a big,
like I said before, where you're like, there's no interlude. Like, there's nothing. They just immediately go straight into it. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, I was not expecting this.
I think that's okay because Scorched Earth Pass, track number 3, is a bit more conventional in the sense that it has a chorus.
That's true.
Well, I mean, at least a more identifiable, memorable chorus. Anyway, Tectonic Plays wasn't really about the chorus. It was more about just the journey, I feel like, and it just the entirety of it being a long ass track. But I do like how that one is a bit more familiar sounding. So I think that's how that kind of works. That transition works for me. But yeah, at the end of the day, this is a very cool record. I haven't done much digging into Violent Silence's rest of their catalog, although I do have the album before queued up ready to listen to at some point. But I was definitely impressed with this one. And if you like weird progressive music, really inventive keyboard playing, and some unusual vocals, give it a shot.
Yeah, no, I agree. I highly recommend this. I'm definitely feeling it. And again, whatever platform you want to listen to on, go ahead and listen, because I think you are certainly you're in for something.
Absolutely. Well, very well said. All right, everyone, keep listening. Have a good night. Drive safely.
Peace.